Good afternoon and welcome. It's Pennsylvania Healthy Lands Week, and we are celebrating all things stewardship. We often think of stewardship uh, perhaps of natural resources, but Pennsylvania also has a treasure trove of historical and cultural resources as well. And today, our two guests are going to talk a little bit about why it matters to pay attention to preservation of our historic resources. With me today is Rusty Baker, who's with the Pennsylvania Museums Organization, and Matthew Wedd, who runs the Conococheague Institute. So let's start with you, Rusty. Who belongs to the Pennsylvania Museums group, and what is your mission?
We are an association for museums in Pennsylvania. We've been around since 1906. We have about 370 members, the majority of which are institutional members. So those are museums, historical sites, and historical organizations. The great majority of them are quite small and volunteer run. Not everybody is the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia. Um, and Matthew's organization, the Conococheague Institute, is much more representative, really, of our members, organizations that have been taken care of in small communities and tell very specific stories. About the history and culture in Pennsylvania over the years. Pennsylvania is blessed with just an abundance of museums. As one of the earliest colonies, we have a deeper history than, say, Arizona does. So we have museums that explore the pre-Revolutionary War period and colonization period, right on up through the American Revolution, and right on up to today. People are still actively collecting the history that's being made. Um, our mission is to strengthen those museums, and PA Museums does that by connecting people. I'm currently helping some folks find an expert to restore their log cabin in Chester County. It's a little outside of what I normally do, but they need help, so I'm helping them. And the history organizations in Chester County are pitching in with what they know. It's very rewarding to connect folks. We also do a lot of advocacy work. PA Museums, we're located in Harrisburg, in the capital. We make the case for support for museums up at the Capitol with our lawmakers. The that a lot of people always read that as asking for money. Yes, we do that, but we also ask for other ways that lawmakers can support museums, whether that is in education or laws about special events, because many of our museums host special events. There is never a shortage of issues to talk to folks about because museums kind of are at a crossroads. Part of it's tourism, part of it is economic development, part of it's education, and the cultural aspect of it, is very, very important for future generations, regardless of those things. Um, we did a survey some time ago about museum collections, and the result of that was kind of astounding. Our smaller organizations have so many objects that if you put them in tractor trailers and lined them up, they would stretch 14 miles. And that's just the small ones.
Wow.
So you can imagine how much stuff we've got here to take care of. Um, One of the things that we were very interested in here with Healthy Lands Week was connecting the outdoor spaces and natural history activities in museums to, what's going on around us. Because museums are, we're not monks. We don't live in a monastery on top of a mountain. We live in the communities where we operate and have outdoor spaces that many people enjoy. So I think that's my spiel. Did I miss anything?
No, I think that's great. Thank you very much for sharing the resources page, as you can see scrolling. Um, I am one of those kind of travelers that wherever I go, I'm usually looking for some kind of park or forest or natural area that I can experience. But also, sometime during the same trip, I'm looking for a museum that I want to learn and immerse myself in what was once here, what happened here, who lived here, what did they do, why did they stop here. I feel like that is the true value of the preservation that we're fighting for, is that you can step into a place or a space or see those objects and hear the story that is told. And so I think it's very fitting that we're talking about historic preservation at the same time as we're talking about stewardship of our land. It's kind of a land in the sense of this land is your land, land is my land, that there's an experience here. I also think it's important that we have these living history kind of opportunities, whether it's a museum, a curated museum of objects, or like the Conococheague Institute, where you can kind of see and experience a living expression of history there. That it's important for us to know what happened here. I think it's always evolving as well, that history is not just a once and done and agreed upon set of facts, that there's always something to learn and understand from different points of view. So let's turn now to Matthew. Tell us a little bit about the Conococheague Institute. Where are you and what do you do there?
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Rusty. The Conococheague Institute is a 30-acre site located in Franklin County near Mercersburg, right on the tip of the bottom of Pennsylvania. Our official mission is very long: to preserve and educate and foster awareness and understanding of the cultural, natural history of the frontier. It's a long mission, but history and nature, just like the parks and the land stewardship you're talking about, every museum, whether they are located in a 30-acre wilderness like we are, or whether they're in downtown, they are connected to their community, their environment. So our primary focus is on the middle of the 18th century. How did people live? What did they wear? What did they eat? Their chores, their crafts. Our farmstead here has several 18th and 19th century structures, but George Washington was never here. A battle was never fought here. So our focus isn't on the big history, it's on the day-to-day lives, people's life skills. As a result of that, though, we can have a better connection with students and the public, because most of us aren't going to be George Washington. We're just regular people. So by reflecting on our ancestors' daily lives, it can better help us understand our own. Because our mission does combine both nature and history, you'll see on those images a lot there. A lot of our programs are directly tied with both. So Amelia there with yarn in their hands. We have a program about dying in history, dying for color, I should say, not dying dead. But using natural plants, native plants that are in our landscape here today. And we'll be doing that next Saturday from 10 to 4. This Saturday, I've got those students here and people from the area for a conservation day. So again, stewardship of our museum also requires for us stewardship of our land. And the 30 acres here and a small staff, I can't be everywhere at once. So we have dedicated volunteers that come in to help clean up the stream, to plant trees with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, to do native plant prairie projects. And as a result of that, even if people don't have that skill when they come in, they've left with an appreciation, and maybe they want to go home and plant a tree near their stream. Or maybe they want to take it one step further and contact an organization and try and do an entire native restoration. So yeah, we are really blessed right now with our nature and our history kind of backdrop and the way they are combining. And as a museum, I'll say that's helped us with our demographic, because not everyone wants to learn about 18th century tricorn hats or how to make a steak and ale pie. Some people are really interested in seeing a great blue heron or finding a rare bug under a piece of bark. And so by highlighting those natural aspects, we've actually doubled our increase of audience, and that's greatly benefited our organization.
I had the pleasure of visiting the Conococheague Institute a couple of weeks ago, and I got to take off my shoes and stomp on some grapes as a demonstration of how they made wine. So I think that the link between the history and the landscape there is critical because human beings need resources to survive. So they would have settled in a place and taken into account how to preserve it and promote the good fortune around them. So a lot of those native things that we try to preserve today, that we work really hard to um, make sure have a thriving environment, would have been settled in that area and made it fruitful, which I think is kind of fun. I want to go back to what you said, Rusty, about advocacy. And I think that ties in with this another question of, what can people do to express their stewardship of our cultural and historical resources? Every one of these points of interest, I think, is grounded in the community stepping up and saying something important happened here and we want people to know about it. And so it takes concerned and motivated citizens to speak up on behalf of those important places. So whether you're asking the legislature for funding in the state budget to keep it going, or supporting it just directly, I think that public-private partnership is a really critical element. And it takes more than just donations to run these things. Matthew mentioned volunteers. So why don't I throw this out for both of you? What can people really do? What are some steps they can take to really participate in preserving these wonderful places?
Well, I think first and foremost, visiting. It's it's kind of an entryway. It's a gateway to support. Um, Museums and historical organizations keep track of not only how many visitors they get, but where those visitors are from, and that translates for our organizations into a roadmap of how to serve visitors better. It's helpful and it has value. Even museums that are free, historical events in your community that are free, your being there and participating in it is important. 90% of Pennsylvanians at some point every year do this. They take advantage of a museum event or an event run by a historical organization in their community, and they get up and they go there. That is an enormous number. Um, from the applications for grants that we just received last year, 7.6 million people visited the 170 museums that receive state funding, and there are many that don't receive state funding. So you can imagine what the overall impact of that visitation is. Because people don't just go to a museum, they pay for parking, they buy lunch, they get a hotel room, they put gas in their tank. It is an enormous economic impact. Another thing people can do is volunteer. Um, Matthew was talking about keeping up with 30 acres of land. I own an eighth of an acre and it's challenging for me. So I can imagine what 30 acres requires in terms of human labor. And that work has value, and that commitment to do that instead of something else is also important. So encouraging a spirit of volunteerism, um, that is also an important support for organizations. And then you get into the more complicated things like, are you willing to join to pay a membership fee to a museum, an annual membership, or leave $1 in the donation box? Or are you a person with more generosity? Can you sponsor something at that museum or provide a higher level of support as an individual donor? And then right up the ladder to Are you willing to stick your neck out and write a letter to your local newspaper about how great the museum in your community is and how people should go there? Are you willing to write to your lawmaker and stick your neck out and say, hey, I believe in this place. You should come visit it and you should support it. So the range, there's very passive support, and then there's very active and engaged support, and it's all really important to the museums and historical organizations that dot Pennsylvania. I think we have about 1,000 um, museums and historical organizations out there. Most of them are very small.
Yeah, that's good advice. Something for everyone. Matthew, what do the volunteers do at your place?
So the volunteers for our organization do everything from kind of educating the public in our living history to, as I said, planting the trees, planning the behind the scenes things. But what I'll back up there for Rusty is very much everyone, to be a good steward, is an ambassador, both at the high and the low end level. So yes, if you know a politician, invite them to come out to see your favorite site. If you have a favorite banker, take them out and maybe they'll become a sponsor. And we've seen that become a pattern now. The more we are involved in the community, the more our local community supports us. It used to be that about 90% of our revenue was from one donor, and now we are getting grants and donations from across the board, making it more balanced. And even that low end level of ambassadorship, if you've been somewhere, post about it on your favorite social media, make a comment, write a letter. We have visitors now. We have about 5,000 people on our Facebook now. And 4 years ago, we had 1,000. And all it took was engaging the public, show them what we do. So I say to other museums and sites, visibility is your best tool. You can have the best marketing in the world, but just show people what you're doing. People are interested in human experiences. If you're looking at CI's imagery on our social media website, what you'll see is people. We have a great building here. We have wonderful artifacts, but they don't sell an experience. So we try and include people in all of our images to show people that could be you on your next visit. That could be you when you're volunteering next. That could be your experience. And then what I'll also note is for stewardship of our history and our nature is everyone should be encouraging the youth to get involved. Because 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, they are going to be in charge. We are really lucky at the Conococheague Institute that we have the youth. I am the old fossil here, it seems, and I'm only in my mid-30s. So yeah, we've engaged teenagers, and that has reinvigorated our older generation of donors who believe that today's youth didn't care about history or volunteering or nature. And I can say the complete opposite. I have more teenagers helping me in the garden, helping me build a goat shed, doing programs with me than anything else. So teenagers, the youth, they do want to get involved. It's just, it can be hard for them to feel wanted. And so to be a good steward, I'd say to every site, organization, or business, it's like find your local school, scout group, youth group, church group, engage the youth. And through those youths, you're going to get their parents, their grandparents, their great-grandparents, their cousins. And of course, we're building for the future that way.
I think that's excellent. I know I was one of those kids who really enjoyed visiting museums. I don't know, maybe not every kid feels that way, but to participate in something and learn something, and especially if you can see somebody dressed up in an old-fashioned gear and stuff like that, those are life-changing or opportunities for a kid, that they see that, they learn it, and they never forget it, and it turns them into lifelong learners and lifelong stewards, hopefully. So I think that's excellent advice. So Rusty, talk to us a little bit about where we can find museums. Where should people look?
I think if you If you look around at all, you will find them. But my advice for people who want to have a museum experience that is rewarding, maybe first start with what you're most interested in. Um, we have all kinds of museums. We have children's museums where, much of that learning is hands-on and playful. So if we have children's museums in almost every community, science centers in almost any city over 50,000 people. There are small historical societies in just about every county. There are a few that don't have one. But if you start at your interests, say you're interested in art, we have 20 great art museums in Pennsylvania, some of them regional, some of them in smaller cities and larger cities. If you're interested in trains, we have 7 train museums. We have some of the best automobile museums in the world in Pennsylvania. Um, and we have, great history museums that cover just about every aspect of American history. Um, any American conflict that has ever occurred, Pennsylvanians were a part of it. Almost every growing industry in Pennsylvania, you can just go back through time and, you've got lumber, you've got canals, you've got coal, you've got steel, you've got natural gas. It's all there. Agriculture, also there. We have a thriving community of farm museums, Landis Valley Farm Museum in Lancaster County, Quiet Valley, which is a living farm in Northeast Pennsylvania. These are the kinds of places that I think people with particular interests will really come away with something. Um, eh, once you're comfortable going to museums and you realize that it isn't all just, snobbery and $1 million artifacts behind glass, that you can actually engage with it and interact with it and take something from it and bring something to it.
Mhm.
Then you can move on to areas outside of your interest and still find some enrichment, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's a good reminder that museums are not just historical artifacts. Museum is just a sort of a collection of some interesting thing. So it's a place to learn, it's a place to experience, and really expand your horizons. And it's true that Pennsylvania is just so rich. There's just such a heritage here, just so many exciting cultures and experiences, and a timeline of things that changed the world. The list of that industry are things that literally changed the world, and it happened here. So much to learn and so much to do. So as we wrap this up here, I'd like to go back to Matthew to talk a little bit about some of the events that you have planned in the coming weeks. Like, how can people, what can people do, and how can they experience the Conococheague Institute?
Thank you. And not just us. Like, yes, there are some places that focus on very large events, and we do have a few events coming up, which I'll talk about. But many organizations like us, we have programs regularly. We have free programs every Saturday. When you stopped by, Amy, a few weeks ago, we were doing a grape stomping. That was just a program. And we made a video of it, which is now on our YouTube, about how to make wine out of stomping grapes. But there are so many organizations right on your doorstep that are having something often. They're having a speaker series. They're having a craft workshop. People do look for big events, but I encourage people to look what's happening all the time. In the last month, we've had more visitors from Pittsburgh, from Philadelphia, and even from DC than we've had from the local towns around us. And tourists will often do that. They'll go further away for an experience, but there's always something right on your doorstep. For our big exciting programs for the fall, this weekend it's a nature conservancy training. The next weekend it is doing the natural dyes. Later on in the month, we have a program on trials and punishment, which is a new program where we will be using 18th century court cases and encouraging the public to take part in them with us. Rusty, you become the defendant. Amy, you have the script of the jury. I have the judge. And using the actual words of the people at the time, we can get into their mindset and find out what they thought about law, crimes, and the legal system. Our next big event is our exciting November 9th bonfire night. That bonfire night has become a big thing for us. It's kind of our niche. Bonfires were very popular throughout the 18th century for various reasons, including Guy Fawkes Day. But for us, it is a community celebration before winter. As well as the large bonfire, there'll be craft vendors, food vendors, there'll be beer and whiskey. There'll be a live bird of prey demonstration, falcon and Miller's Wildlife, a children's entertainer, tavern talks, and new archery. And so try and come to programs often. Go every week to a museum. But if you can't, then find those big events. A lot of effort goes into them. And our bonfire night is completely free. So most events, as Rusty said earlier on, are often free because it is our mission to show you our cultural heritage, to show you our natural heritage. Yes, we could charge and make it a restricted affair, but our mission says we want to get as many people experiencing American history as we can. So yeah, that's our next big event, and we encourage everyone to come out.
Wonderful. So much fun. So many exciting things to learn and do and participate in. We still have a few days left of Pennsylvania Healthy Lands Week, so there are some special events going around the state. We can put the website up that you can certainly click through to see some of the events that are scheduled, but stewardship doesn't end at the end of Pennsylvania Healthy Lands Week. It's an ongoing call to action. Get out there, explore, learn, participate, and really have a good time enjoying everything that Pennsylvania has to offer. So I will leave it at this. Thank you very much for all of your attention during Pennsylvania Healthy Lands Week. Find a museum, find a park, find a point of interest, and get out there and show you care. Thank you.